Cool. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name is Suj.
And my name is James.
It's Monday. Still games to go. 6 games still left in there.
5.
Tottenham today.
Yeah.
5 double game week games in there.
4.
Is there only 4?
Only 4 for my rank to get worse.
Yeah. Well, it can't be much worse than mine because my game week rank at the moment is like 5.5 million.
Oh, YMCA.
Well, I swerved everybody that hauled this week. There was a lot of players that hauled that don't have high ownership, and I swerved them all.
Oh, do you want to give some shout outs?
The only people that returned for me: Rudiger, captain, Trent. That's it. Stops there.
Okay, fine.
So obviously didn't have Reece James. Didn't have any of the Villa guys. I swerved Bukayo Saka as well. Didn't have him.
Bukayo
Saka. So I didn't have Ivan Toney. Didn't have Ryan Fraser.
You didn't have Ivan Toney?
No.
Oh my God, really? Shout out to our Brentford correspondent Tom Med. It's his birthday, and of course he does own Ivan Toney.
Yeah. Even a broken clock is right twice.
Exactly.
Season. So yeah, I swerved all of those players, literally, basically all of them. And so ended up, I'm only on 39 points as it stands. I've still got Sonny to go today from the first round, the fixtures, and then all the double game weeks, but not really a huge amount from double game weeks.
So
that gives me much interest.
What did you do?
And I sold Gallagher for Mount.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Don't hate that. After we did the Chip Talk pod on Friday, we did our Patreon Game Week 28 preview, and I was trying to talk you into selling Gallagher.
Yeah, it makes sense with Trossard having the double next week, but then even Trossard will go.
I mean, is Trossard even going to start twice? I own him as well, but yeah, I'll probably start him this week. It's not even a guarantee that I'll start him, actually, because I'm just not convinced that he'll even play twice. But I imagine if he plays Tottenham next Wednesday, he'll probably return, especially as I'll be at the Amex. So who did good for you? Just Trent and Rudiger. Is that your points, basically?
That's it.
No other returns?
Nothing. Kilman, blank. Foster, blank. Cancelo, blank. Bowen, Salah, Brodger, the points dodger, and Dennis, blank.
How many points say you got?
39. I didn't take a hit at least.
Okay, fine. Well, I think I can see the difference between me and you, Suj. Ryan Fraser.
One player.
Wee man! Basically, yeah.
Oh, wow.
13-point return for Ryan Fraser.
What's your game week rank? 4 million? 3.5?
2.5.
Okay, so there's quite a big jump in 11 points.
But to be fair, mine's on 51 and it's got to stop jogging the table. Yeah. -4 with it as well. So I genuinely, when I did the Chip Talk pod last Friday, I didn't know what I was doing. When we did that Patreon pod, I still was not clear in my mind what I was doing. Once I finally got to sit down and look at it on Friday night, I decided on my strategy in terms of what I wanted to do with chips and how that was then going to affect my transfer planning going forward. So I looked at kind of playing through game week 30. Remember I said I kind of had like 6 players available for game week 30 as it stood. Didn't really feel like free hit therefore was going to be necessary. But when I spoke a lot about obviously looking at when you're free hitting, what sort of gains do you want? Is there gains within that week if I do it? And also factoring in the transfers that I'd make on either side. And once I'd factored that idea into my plans, it became clear to me that I wanted to free hit in game week 30. And that influenced the decisions that I made firstly in 28 and I'm now going to make going into game week 29. So I sold Dalot for Rudiger, which was always the plan. I feel he's, like most people, we always want to punt these attacking fullbacks / wing backs, the likes of Reece James, Trent, Cancelo, Andy Robertson, etc. But to be honest, Reece James wasn't really a consideration for myself. And the main reason why was, not convinced in the slightest that he'd play twice. The Cesar's Palaqueta news didn't really influence my thinking. My instinct was that Chelsea would probably play a back 4 at Burnley. They didn't. Played a back 3. That might have influenced my thinking. But it's also a principal idea I have that I don't like because it's bit me so many times in the past, buying players when they've just come back from injury. Now, Reece James obviously come back and looks like a world beater instantly, and he's absolutely brilliant asset. But I don't regret the fact that I went for Rudiger. It wasn't really a close call for me. I'm happy I've got the return that I've got so far. And who knows, maybe Reece James might not turn up on Thursday and Rudiger might get me the 15-pointer. I doubt it, but the game week's not over.
But if Rudiger gets the 12 points versus Reece James' 18, it's narrowed the gap quite a bit.
Yeah, the problem is it's probably more likely to be Antonio Rudiger 12 and about another 18 for Reece James.
Yeah.
It's probably more likely.
He's a massive regret for me, Reece James. I've got historical bias with Reece James because whenever I've owned him, he's done stupidly well for me. So whenever I think,
I've
he's
had the
fitting
opposite,
well,
actually, yeah.
I'm like, I should get him. I'm in a... my strategy's kind of set in 30, 33 free hits and wildcard after that and bench boost in 36 and maybe 37 depending on how it lands. But I feel like I am making and have made too many decisions in the last 6 or 7 weeks that I should make, not that I want to make. You know what I mean by what's the sensible thing to do when you've got a double game week coming up rather than what do you want to do because of enjoyment and all the rest of it. There's far too many. Like I look at my squad and Dennis still being there because I can't sell him because he's got doubles coming up yet. I don't care really that he's sitting there. Even Trossard as a transfer is one that good fixtures, but really I've never owned a lot of Brighton assets in the past and don't really care to own Brighton assets necessarily. Even Weghorst, I mean, he caused Chelsea a few problems, but, you know, it was because we've got the double rather than players that I want to own necessarily. Not getting Reece James was because the sensible thing to do is get Robertson this week rather than James next week. It's all these sensible decisions that you should make.
So did you just buy Andy Robertson at the weekend?
No. I'm going to buy him in 29 for the double. So I was like, I'm going to save the transfer to get Robbo for the double rather than get Reece James now, even though Reece James's fixtures are better. And I actually enjoy owning Reece James more than I own buying Robbo. But it made more sense to just get Mason Mount in and then Robbo next week. And all these sensible decisions, when they don't go well, are more annoying than the punty ones that when they do go well, the upside. So, you know, I'm not going to use my wildcard. It's not sensible, but I would tear my team up quite a bit. I mean, I think a back five of Cancelo, Robertson, Trent, Rudiger and James is more than acceptable.
You ain't never benching any of them.
Yeah, play five at the back. The problem is once you chuck in Salah, that's like nearly half your budget gone on 6 players.
Kane's son becomes difficult.
Very. That's the challenge with that plus Salah, because Salah, no one's moving on Salah. So yeah, it's an interesting one at the moment. But yeah, this week's not been good. It's affected my rank by 50k. Could all change if Sonny goes big today. What's Sonny's ownership? Let's have a cheeky look. 20%. So it's not Son of old where he's been in the 40s and stuff. So 20% today. If he goes off, will help my rank.
He'll get some interest this week. But obviously, the fact that Salah's got a double is normally kind of for people the kind of interest roots of Sonny. So unless people
and Luis Diaz doing well.
Unless people are kind of stacked in that area. One of the reasons, again, was in terms of free hit 30 was that there's no real way for me to get to Heung-min Son, really, for game week 30. I don't think in terms of the ways that I want to play the game. And I'd like to have that cover of him and Harry Kane in that particular game week. I got Rudiger in for Dallo, was always the plan. And I decided to take a -4 for Ryan Fraser in for, Suj, Jarrod Bowen.
What, you don't need to apologise to me. There's the injured Jarrod Bowen
now.
Well,
the people that should say sorry is probably the Twitter account Opta Joe. Did you see the tweet that Opta Joe tweeted 2 minutes before West Ham kicked off against Liverpool?
No.
That Jarrod Bowen had never missed the Premier League game for West Ham United since he'd signed.
Has he not? That's very interesting.
He's probably going to miss the next one.
Well, we don't know the prognosis yet, but he's twisted his ankle.
I imagine he's not going to be available for Villa on Sunday. But it does sound like good news, by the way. It does sound like...
Well, if he's not available for Villa on Sunday, it means he's not available for Sevilla away on Thursday, which is much more important, really. We needed him for that.
Is it? That's a Tottenham conversation, I think.
Oh, definitely away at Sevilla is more important than Villa
So
at home.
I spoke about Ryan Fraser quite a bit last Monday. It was nagging at me all week that I'd gone back and watched. I watched Match of the Day on not Saturday night, actually Sunday morning, because me and Suj were drunk on the Saturday night, and was really impressed and wanted to watch more of the game. And he really stood out. I only kind of really went back and watched the first half because obviously Brentford went down to 10 men quite early. But his performance had certainly been growing for a number of weeks. I think at his peak, he's a decent FPL asset. Look, it was a punt. This one's worked for me and saved the week from being a little bit of a disaster. I'm on a red at the moment. I've dropped to basically almost exactly 100,000 in rank. A 15-pointer from Harry Kane tonight wouldn't go amiss. And then I'm probably back to a green arrow. Not that I'm obviously expecting that. My only other returnees were Rudiger captain and Trent 12 as well. I've still got Foster, Cody, Rudiger, Jacob Ramsey, Fraser, Rafinha, Breuer to go again, and obviously Kane tonight. So I've only got 3 players finished, so I've still got 8 to go in this particular game week. And I know what I'm doing this week, Suj.
Talk to me.
Doing the same as you, boy. So part of the reason buying Fraser as well was to make sure there's clearly and comfortably enough money there to buy Andy Robertson for this game week. I'm going to buy him for Connor Cody. It's an absolute certainty. Again, for me, moving away from, I say it's a certainty, Robbo's obviously got to come through the Inter Milan game tomorrow. Moving away from game week 30 makes obviously owning Wolves defensive less of a priority for me. They got well beat, and we'll talk about it, against Crystal Palace at the weekend. So the idea is to go in with Robertson for a free transfer, and that'll leave me a pretty big selection headache for the weekend, because I'll have strong back 5 as well. I'll have Kieran Tierney, Rudiger, Trent, Cancelo, and then obviously Robertson. And the idea, to be honest, is to start those 5 in most weeks. But I've got a couple of single game week players. Not sure I want to bench this week. Rafinha at home to Norwich, Breuer at home to Watford, Rudiger at home to Newcastle, Cancelo away to Crystal Palace. I'll buy Robertson. One of them's getting benched. Most likely would actually probably be Breuer at home to Watford, and it would also leave me benching Weghorst away to Brentford. No, I'm not going to bench boost it. And I also want to change my goalkeeper, Suj.
Ramsdale in for De Gea.
No.
You're going to go Saar?
No. At the moment, I'm leaning towards buy-in, take a deep breath, Jordan Pickford.
Okay, just because of the amount of fixtures they've got?
Well, the way I'm looking at it is good double this week. Wolves at home, Newcastle at home. I do maintain that there is an unpredictability about goalkeeper returns. I'm obviously going to free hit 30, so that doesn't matter. 31, they've got West Ham away. The 32 fixture is not too bad. Manchester United at home. Sorry, Red Devils. But obviously from the workings out on Friday, we think probably one of those 2 weeks will end up landing in a double game week for Everton. Free hit 33 is almost, well, it is going to be a single for Everton. Don't need him for that. And then game week 34 could also be another double, although they are away to Liverpool. My other keeper, Ben Foster, would be away to Manchester City. But I might end up wildcarding in game week 34. So for me, Pickford could literally be just 3 game weeks, and it might be 2 doubles in there.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think that's worth the little saving of going for Reece or Ramsdale.
And you do that as a -4
So
this week, obviously.
Here's the thing with the Chip Talk pod from Friday, right? As I said at the time, there's no guarantee the kind of projected schedule is going to be right. In fact, it's not going to be right. But there's certain principles behind the schedule that I'm obviously going to follow myself. And going in for Everton and Jordan Pickford might be one of them. I wouldn't say it's definite that I'm going to buy him over Ramsdale or Lloris, because if I watch Everton tonight and they look like a complete disaster at White Hart Lane, that might influence my decision to look at one of the other 2. But it would be between Ramsdale, Lloris and Pickford. The thinking behind going Robertson, I think he's quite self-explanatory. But rather than one of the attacking players, i.e. Diaz, I mean, he looks absolutely fantastic. Such Luis Diaz or Diogo Jota is, I don't really know where I stand with it at the moment in terms of who's playing, who's not. And Robbo's he's still an absolutely great asset. So I'm going to go with the extra defensive player there. And I do think at the moment, if I need to make some short-term moves, I think there's a few players in and around kind of sub 6.5 million in the midfield where I can say move on Trossard or something that aren't too bad. Trossard's going to be a pain in the eye. He's got Norwich at home in game week 31. Yes, Saka, I could consider that to make it part of a -8. He was absolutely terrific again yesterday. He's really, really stepping up to the top draw footballer, Bukayo Saka. So, yeah, won't rule that out. Could be as much as a -8. I don't think I will because Liverpool's their second fixture, but 2 home games. I think Arsenal were certainly at least top 4 for home record this season, if not third. I think they're quite close with Chelsea. It's one of the reasons Arsenal were ahead in the race for 4th is their home record is much better than the other challengers.
Yep. Should we cover off some of these games as we do each and every week? Starting with Leicester 1, Leeds 0. Jesse Marsh's first game in charge. I think Leeds fans will be disappointed to lose a game, but probably happy enough that it's single digit, like just a 1-0 rather than getting into. I don't mean single digits, but I mean 3s, 4s, multiple goals conceded. Just conceding the 1 is clearly an improvement.
Although Marsh did say that he thought the performance was more important than the result, which I don't think quite works considering the trouble Leeds are in.
Where they're in the league, that doesn't make sense.
But I got the sentiment, and there are fixtures coming up now for Leeds, which I guess from that point of view are more important. Villa at home, Norwich at home, Wolves away, Southampton at home, Watford away. Their next 5 in the league are probably going to define where Leeds finish come the end of the season. It's a massively important run coming up. And Rafinha, who I own, was a little bit unlucky not to get a return at the weekend. I mean, he's missed a chance from inside the 6-yard box, which was well saved by Kasper Schmeichel, who played very well in goal for Leicester. I think what we got from Marsh was what we expected, that there would still be intensity to their play. The pressing is more about pressing the receiver rather than the person physically on the ball. So they wait. As soon as the pass is made, then they go and press. What Liverpool's kind of best strategy is in terms of pressing as well. The system wasn't quite 4-2-2-2 because Rodrigo kept dropping off into the pockets really deep. I thought Dan James played quite well, actually. It was 4-2-3-1 really, but with flexibility for the front 4 to go and have movement within that system. There was periods of the game it just looked like 4-4-2. There was other periods it looked like 4-2-4. There wasn't a huge amount of defensive responsibility on the 2 wide players, which I think in certain games is going to make them very dangerous on the counter-attack. This result wasn't going to define what was going to happen to Leeds, and that's where I get Marsh's comments. It's the next few are big, and I don't think we should necessarily overlook them. It's Norwich at home this coming weekend. I mean, Rafinha's not going anywhere. I don't know how I could bench that.
No,
at home to Norwich. For Leicester, I'm not going to talk about them too much because Aaron Lager's coming on Clash of the Correspondents this coming Thursday. But for those who are obviously building towards game week 30, you're probably not buying this week. But I think game week 30, you are going to be looking Brentford at home. Mm-hmm. There's certainly going to be some interest. One of the major problems with looking at Leicester long term is the potential impact of their Europa Conference funds. So actually, for people like me who are looking to wildcard late, I kind of want them to go out.
Yeah, makes it a bit easier.
To be honest, otherwise you're going to get near the end and it's like, they're 10th in the league or wherever they're going to be, nothing to play for in the league. Sure, they pick the best team in the Conference League if they get to the semi-finals, for example. So kind of, no disrespect to the Leicester fans, but from an FPL perspective, it would be handy if they went out. And I think it would be for a lot of FPL managers. Game week 30 to be some interest. We just don't know where we stand really with the forwards and stuff, do we?
Well, if Vardy's fit, Vardy plays.
Well, I guess so, but not.
Yes, so Vardy's been fit 2 games. Obviously, he's not started the first of the last 2. They won games,
not necessarily if they make a decision that this Conference League is going to become the priority. And I guess over the next 10 days or so with this tie against Rennes, we're going to find out. Like, if Vardy starts both, I think we know that Vardy's probably...
Because he's had so much time out, he's going to play. Like, there's nothing that would stop me having Vardy and Barnes probably, depending on fitness, in my free hit.
But it feels like in any week, I'd say it was Barnes and Albrighton at the weekend. It feels like just as easily in the next Leicester game, it could be Maddison and Lookman, for example, right? He's another one that's annoying, James Maddison, who you think, oh, get fit. Shout out for Syunshu, because I think he's had a terrible season. I thought he played quite well on Saturday. Interesting that Albrighton played right back. And shout out name who wasn't available for free hit as Gameweek 30, who I'm strongly considering if he's available, is Ricardo Pereira.
He was out.
He's the sort of one like Reece James this week. I'd like to punt that on the free hit in Gameweek 30 if he's back available. Leicester were a little bit fortunate to win this. Great goal from Harvey Barnes.
Villa 4, Southampton 0 has got to be one of the shock results of the weekend. I didn't see the slapping come into Southampton, but Hasenhüttl was fairly honest in his post-match interview, saying that they just weren't at it in the first half. He got his formation wrong with 4 at the back, and they struggled a lot. And being 1-0 down, he was saying obviously he tried to wait until half-time to change it to 5 at the back, and they're a bit better, but at this point, Aston Villa bossed it. And Coutinho popping up with a goal and an assist. He's another one on that list of players that people might have gambled on because of the double. Ollie Watkins back on the score sheet. Danny Ings, goal and assist. Returns to be had.
It's possibly going to be a little bit of a theme on this podcast of key defensive assets missing games and the impact of that. Mohamed Salisu's only missed or not started one other game for Southampton this season. They lost 3-0 at Arsenal. There's 2 games haven't started. They've lost 3-0 and 4-0. So look, football's bigger than one player, but he's been exceptional for them this season, and I don't think we should necessarily read too much into the Southampton loss. It was clearly a bad day at the office. Hasenhüttl's face looked exasperated from the bits of the game I'd seen where he was just really frustrated. I think Salisu's miss has probably been quite underplayed, and there's every chance that he may even be back as quickly as the Newcastle game on Thursday night. Should he not be, Newcastle might have some joy, and actually Watford might even next Sunday as well. So, I mean, that's just quite a stark statistic, isn't it? 2 games missed, lost 3-0 and 4-0. Villa could have won by more in terms of chance. I mean, for those who haven't got Philippe Coutinho and a curse in it, you've been lucky. He could have been 20 points plus, mate. My goodness. And they've got a system now where obviously 2 games in a row, they've won both, kept clean sheets in both. This was obviously a far superior performance to the win at Brighton, where Coutinho's allowed to go and play where he wants, basically now. Where you got the 3 midfielders who have a nice balance, Louise, Ramsey and McGinn, though as Lee Jackson said on COTC on Thursday, there are concerns about players in the pockets between the back 4, and Louise is not a kind of natural sitting holding midfielder as an anchor as such. So I think that there will be certain games where it's probably not the sort of game actually, yeah, it is. It depends who plays 10 for West Ham at the weekend, whether you can influence that area and bother them or not. But Coutinho floating into space, being able to run onto things and play wherever he wants is a genius footballer, isn't he? And those who've gone in, congratulations. I got him in Sky Fantasy, softened my blow somewhat, Suj. And those who, I think, late riser, captained him, I think.
Oh, nice.
Mr. Uprise Chaser himself. He's having a great season again.
Upside Chasing.
That's the one.
Yeah.
I got Upriser for late riser, yeah. He'd be honoured if I named the pod after him for that. But he didn't captain.
The Uprising.
He didn't captain Reece James, did he?
No.
But yeah, I mean, look, there could be more to come with obviously Leeds on Thursday night. Looking forward to watching that. Game's on Amazon on Thursday night. Looking forward to that one. I think for Saints, it's a brush it under the carpet and know they've had a great run and move on and hope that Salisu's back fit. Obviously, Cole Walker-Peters didn't play either. Che Adams, underlying numbers, really good again, actually, at the weekend. He looks at the moment a better option than Breuer if you're looking to invest in them, but I'm not convinced that he's worth paying the 1.6 million extra over Breuer, for example. But head-to-head, Adams is looking the better option as it stands at the moment. Callum Chambers, by the way, shout out, the assist, or the assist for the assist. One of the passes of the season, that, for Philippe Coutinho to lay on to Luiz.
Burnley got slapped by Chelsea 4-0. There'll be a number of people that are hanging on to Burnley assets from the doubles. Unfortunately, didn't help, like Nick Pope and what have you, ending up with nothing. Difficult result for Burnley, but Chelsea can do that. I think it's the ease with which they just went from 1 to 3 up and game done and dusted and dead.
So, continuing the theme of missing defenders being absolutely pivotal, no Ben Mee for Burnley, who many obviously went with on free hit. Perhaps was still hanging around in your squads, although you probably benched him this week. Burnley had 2 points from their previous 4 games played this season without Ben Mee. And obviously he came off quite early in the Leicester game, and then they proceeded to concede 6 goals in 1.5 games since. And we spoke about this a lot with Ben Mee last season, that actually the impact on him is, with him missing, is particularly bad, because it means Tarkowski moves from right-sided centre-back to left-sided centre-back. And when he moves to left-sided centre-back, he generally looks absolutely average. Him and Collins did not cover themselves in glory, particularly in that spell in the second half where Sean Dyche said it just went to pot a little bit. So Ben Mee returning for Burnley would be a really big deal. Sean Dyche said he was touch and go, but he tends to say that about players for 3 or 4 weeks in a row, and then eventually they return. Good from Chelsea. They obviously had their moments in the first half where they were fortunate. Burnley had some moments for sure, and actually, those of us have gone Rudiger and actually got the 6 points. Don't be upset about it. We're probably a little bit lucky to get those 6 points, but they obviously had a devastating spell. Chelsea
Rudiger could have scored. He had a couple of good chances, good shots.
Did he? Well, one shot from distance.
Well,
one of them's gonna fly in.
Well,
right?
he does love a cheeky little shot. This old Rudiger. I wouldn't bank against him getting an attacking return against Norwich.
I think the one that's come out of it that's really interesting is Havertz. The moment's probably gone where you probably feel like you should have done it this week, and I think it's another one. So you've gone for Mount, right? To be honest with you, I'd have done the same. I'd have gone Mount over Havertz. The fact that Mount's not been involved in any of the 4 goals when he's so consistent is a little bit surprising.
Yeah, but part of my decision to go with Mount as well was financial. Mount's cheaper than Havertz.
There's also Havertz's first league goals since playing Burnley at home in game week 11. Actually scored a header in that fixture, the 1-1 draw back in game week 11 as well. So he'd only scored, so he's on 4 league goals for the season. 3 of them against Burnley. Norwich next. Is he going to repay the people that obviously pained him so much? I didn't think I could do it again.
Yeah, me neither. There was that legacy issue.
I knew if I bought him, he would be a captain job if he'd come in. But I think it's fair to say he's Chelsea's number 9 now, isn't he?
Well, this is it, right? The difference between Havertz now versus back then is clearly he's taken over from Lukaku up top, potentially, and Lukaku is not the starter. And so Havertz as a number 9 is very different to Havertz as you're getting a striker as a midfielder in FPL for 7.8 for the team that are third in the league. It's very tempting.
Problem is, whoever normally plays number 9 for Chelsea is normally a waste of space.
It's a cursed number or cursed position for them.
Going on for forever. What do you think about that, of Lukaku's lack of involvement?
It doesn't justify his place. Yeah, it's from performances. So I think it's the right decision to drop him if he's not performing on the pitch. And in games that he hasn't played, Chelsea have been able to rack up goals. So I'm in agreement that Havertz is up there as number 9, and I don't think Lukaku's going to find getting his place back easily. He might find himself in a similar situation to Ronaldo. Big headline signing, superstar player, but not in the first team.
It's interesting now, just looking at goals scored since the 3-0 win at Leicester in game week 12, which kind of felt like the peak where a lot of people at that point thought, you know what, Chelsea are going to win the league here, actually. They'd been on a good run, they'd had good
weren't
fixtures.
Conceding goals at all.
Then had some issues with the fitness of the wing-backs, obviously, which has really, obviously, hampered their season. Times have scored more than 2 since game week 12. You've got Leeds at home game week 16, which included 2 penalties, both won by Antonio Rudiger, actually. You've got the 3-1 win at Villa, where actually that was Lukaku's first appearance after the outburst, and he had an absolutely brilliant second half that day. And then the Burnley game, don't put the goals on the board regularly like the top two, unfortunately. That's why they're a little bit behind. It was always my concern for them that if they didn't have a number 9 that would score regular goals this season, then they wouldn't be in contention for the title. And I think that's the way it's panned out. Havertz is the one to watch, though. 7.8. He does look like he's going to play 9. But then again, they're in the Champions League, and especially after the international break, I could see him always wanting to use Havertz in the Champions League games.
Yep.
So it doesn't bring you any guarantees for the Premier League games, unfortunately. Reece James, salute you, mate. Top player.
Newcastle 2, Brighton 1. Where was the Brighton special, the 1-1, eh? When you needed it. But again, if we're carrying on the theme, are you about to say Adam Webster?
Yep.
See it coming.
I really am, mate. But it's amazing the impact, and I think that position particularly, that if you lose one component out of it, obviously how much of a problem it can be. So our Brighton correspondent, FPL Seagull Sam, I think he flew up to Newcastle actually, which I don't blame him for the length of the journey between the two clubs. But he obviously said, like, Webster is the most important player for them now. So, I mean, it's now played 13-1-1 without Webster this season. It's relegation form, isn't it? So I went back and asked Sam, I said, what specifically is it about Webster that is proving such a big miss for Brighton? And he said, the way he brings the ball out, linking defence and attack, it's slow and predictable without him, and it allows us to play a proper back three. Haven't seen the stats, but I'm sure he'll be near the top for progressive carries, passes. Also, when he's missing, we have to start Duffy. And then Duffy didn't start against Villa, and it was more of a back four. They did move back towards the 3 in this particular fixture. They didn't play too badly in the second half, but they give Newcastle a 2-goal start, right? They give themselves too much to do. I feel like Potter's and I said this last week, every now and again they have a run of like 10 games. You're like, they've won 1 in 10. What's happened to them? It seems to happen at some point every season, and Webster seems to be, on this occasion, the trigger for everything going wrong, actually. It was interesting that Morpay was dropped at the weekend. It was like he's trying a few different things, and none of them are overly working. Bissouma sitting on the bench, stayed there all game.
I've got a double this week, but I've got no desire to want to add to Trossard. Trossard will play because he should, and I shouldn't be selling him before a double game week, but I'm not adding any Brighton to my to what I have already. I'm actually more interested in looking at Newcastle, despite the first double bid would have gone. I just think, look, Ryan Fraser, you've bought, but 5.3 million. I'm almost looking at it. I'm comparing Ryan Fraser to Jacob Ramsey as fifth midfielder, and Jacob Ramsey's 4.8 million. So there's $500,000 in it.
That's it, yeah.
Which isn't a lot. I'd rather find a way of getting rid of Dennis down to someone even cheaper and using that money to get Ryan Fraser over Jacob Ramsey, for example. If people are in that kind of similar dilemma where they're looking at fifth midfielder, or you've got Bowen, who's now potentially injured, and you want to come off him, or other midfielders at that price point, down to Ryan Fraser, 5.3. It's a good price, isn't it? But continue to be a good price.
I feel like you'd missed it.
But then he's a long-term hold, Fraser. Like I'm not looking to chop and change.
I think it depends on your strategy. I mean, it's puntable. I mean, for me, the 3 fixtures, obviously I'll start him in the double. Although I think realistically, you look at it and go, it's Everton away. I'll take Chelsea away, as anything more than 2 points is obviously a bonus from that. 31's Tottenham away, and we know Tottenham are pretty Jekyll and Hyde. 32 Wolves at home for me. 34 if I don't wildcard at that point, Norwich away. So I mean that's all right actually in terms of the fixtures he's got as well. I just felt positionally that, and I know a lot of people went Willock, and I spoke to a few Newcastle people, and the general reaction was actually that they preferred Willock. It was just what I'd seen with my eyes in terms of Fraser, the feeling like the intensity and the fitness was back to his game. And I know there's a gem of a footballer in there, really. Wood has obviously still not scored for Newcastle. I'm looking at them about St. Maximin. I'm asking myself, if a Newcastle player hauls in this game, who's the most likely? And Fraser was the conclusion as where I was at. That, let's be honest, if it wasn't double, I don't go and buy the player. It's not particularly a genius move as such. But you're right, actually, at his value, If I decide I don't want to play him at Tottenham in 31 and bench him, then don't play him at Tottenham and bench him 31. That's, we're talking about a 0.5 difference between Fraser and Ramsey. And depending on where you're at with value and what you want to do with your squad, then I think that's worth considering. And there was that as well in terms of, say, Fraser versus Willock. I'm working out that Robertson was going to almost definitely be my 29 move and saying, well, if I'm going to end up benching this player, do I want the 5.8 million midfielder? I've got the save in there. Yeah. So it's close between the two players. I've got a preference for Fraser anyway, and he's cheaper. Let's go for it. If it doesn't work, he can almost sit there on the bench and it doesn't matter for forthcoming game weeks, and I end up with 5-2-3 even potentially.
Yeah.
I don't think you had Newcastle now. I think there might be a few that... The one I kind of goalkeeper I've ruled out is Dubravka, right? And what's to say that I shouldn't go for Dubravka? It's the cheap one. The fixtures for me in terms of coverage would be the same as what I said. So I could consider Dubravka as an alternative. And obviously, if you think to 34, where I've said Pickford goes to Liverpool and Foster goes to Man City, well, Dubravka goes to Norwich. And it's that sort of thing that could be an influencer. I wouldn't look at it and go, oh, I've missed 28 returns with him, because one, actually with him, I haven't missed anything yet. And I wasn't going to chop about when I had a playing double game week goalkeeper in Ben Foster anyway. So it might be towards the weekend, especially depending on what I see with Everton tonight, that I go, actually, Sugar, I should be going with Dubravka here maybe rather than Pickford. It's obviously cheaper. Is it 4.4 Dubravka?
Dubravka is now, James, 4.4. You are correct.
It's not a money decision, though, I don't think. Looking ahead at potential transfers for me, that 0.4 difference is extremely unlikely to make a difference for me. So then it actually just becomes a call over which goalkeeper I prefer. I can't get that idea of the other Everton double out of my head. Thinking, Sugar, it's potentially 2 doubles in 3 game weeks for me. How much Everton do I want? No, not really. Okay, the goalkeeper maybe. On Brighton, just before we finish on Trossard, I don't think Brighton assets, if you have them this week, I don't think are certain starters. Now, I think you should always really play the doubler, but there'd be certain people there sitting there with, say, Cucurella, and you're looking at going, Liverpool at home, Tottenham at home. You're going to have assets from Liverpool, Tottenham as well anyway. So do you even want Cucurella to actually get you returns, certainly in terms of clean sheets? And you've got options again this week with single game week players. Brighton playing Burnley. If you're still hanging on to... Weghorst is likely to be second sub for me, Suj, the way it's going to start.
Crazy.
But it is really, yeah.
Brentford away, you should be starting.
Rafinha at home to Norwich. You've got Southampton assets at home to Watford. If you've still got West Ham at home to Aston Villa. You've still got City at Palace, Arsenal against Leicester. I mean, which one of these is Brighton's double better than? It's not really, but... Trossard, I'm pretty sure I want to say, last season he scored the only goal in a 1-0 win against Tottenham. And if anybody can turn Brighton's, let's say, I was going to say dismal, that's harsh, poor run of form around, it'll be Tottenham next Wednesday, I'm sure, especially as I'll go there and it's bound to be pissing down with rain. And I want to say he got an attacking return in the Liverpool fixture last season as well, Trossard. So, the 2 little impacts there, and you are looking at the 10-pointer or so, and that's why... I think for me, it'd still start. Ironically, in these fixtures, he might have a bit more joy, but I can also see a scenario where he starts against Liverpool and doesn't start against Tottenham, which would be at that point, you'd be looking at going, I should bench this guy. So it's not a guarantee that I'd start in terms of new Brighton assets. I don't see where
none of them.
Where you'd go there. For Newcastle, I wouldn't invest in Wood at the moment. I said this last week. At the moment, he just needs one to go in off his bum at the moment. But actually, players like Fraser and Willock, etc., look more likely to return. And St. Maximin was obviously a used substitute on Saturday. So I think if you are going to go in from now, you go St. Maximin first. Shout out to someone who tweeted me this morning and said, James, love your podcast. Jonathan Aves. Hello, Jonathan. Hope you're well. I know you'll be listening. Who said it's not Fabian Schär, James. It is Fabian Schär. Yeah. Share the love for Fabian Schär. He's only about 4.4 as well. And Sai really plugged him on COTC 11 days ago to say, Fabian Schär, would be the one defensively if he was to go. So he's a bit of an enabler that's worth considering. He's the one I'd go for defensively, other than Dubravka.
Norwich 1, Brentford 3. It was a big game to see how it turned out. Ivan Toney steps up from the spot as he does. He's so good on pen.
Can we have a moment of love for Brandon Williams not killing Christian Eriksen? I take it you've seen that clip.
I didn't see it.
Have you not seen
No.
it? Mate,
What did he do?
it's like, it's probably the best clip of a whole season. So Eriksen's pulling, Williams is trying to run away from him, and Eriksen tries to drag him back. Definite yellow card. I think Eriksen got boots. I'm not sure.
He picked up a yellow.
So Williams kind of tries to shove him off, and ends up on top of him and goes to grab him. Then he realizes he's on top of him and goes to grab him. Realizes it's Eriksen. Yeah. Stops, smiles, and cuddles him. Really nice. I mean, that was the only good news that came out of Norwich's weekend. Dean Smith said prior to the game that they could not lose the game.
They lost it.
Unfortunately, not only did they lose it, they lost it badly. That Adam Eder injury destroyed, in my opinion, the hopes that I think they were building for a little bit, where it genuinely did look like they might get themselves out of the shit. Timu Pukki, despite goals, now dropped to 8th highest, or actually no, that's a little bit unfair. Actually, joint 5th highest scoring FPL point scorer this season. He is still ticking over Timu Pukki at 5.8.
Cheap.
It's reasonable. There's extremely unlikely to be a double on the horizon for Norwich. I mean, it's possible that they could play the Leicester fixture in game week 33, but then their double would be United away and Leicester away. I don't think you want any of that. We might have a cheeky punt on him right at the end, maybe, but I can't see it. And Tim Krul's back in goal for Angus Gunn, so a few people might have been having that as their substitute goalkeeper at the moment, which is understandable. I can't see games where you'd want to start Brandon Williams, but it enables. But I think at the moment, if you're looking for an enabler, you go Ben Johnson at West Ham. I think more than that. Yeah, I think unfortunately that's game over for them. Again, now, to be honest, you can't see him getting anything against Chelsea on Thursday. Leeds away afterwards. I mean, Leeds have got... This is the problem Norwich have as well, and it's been like this for a while. Everybody looks at them and thinks, got to win. And the one interesting thing for Chelsea Thursday night, and one of the things that also put me off of James, for example, and knowing that Rudiger does tend to start every game, not that he's a guarantee. Look at what Liverpool and Man City did recently against Norwich. It was the one game they both went...
beat him. We'll still beat them. But yeah,
rotation. I wouldn't say beating.
No. But rotation.
Mo Salah was still on the pitch and stuff. Raheem Sterling's still on the pitch and stuff. But it was certainly Klopp rested Trent and Robertson against Norwich, didn't he? And Guardiola didn't play Cancelo. There's a fallback theme there in terms of maybe Thursday night. Now, that's not to say that's going to influence what Thomas Tuchel does. But it wouldn't surprise me if Chelsea did rotate quite a lot on Thursday, because I think that the Newcastle game on Sunday is possibly it's definitely the more difficult at the moment, and arguably the more important as well.
Brentford obviously playing game week 30.
Yep.
Home tie to Burnley in 29. Although I just feel like people are going to prioritise getting doublers this week, Robertsons of the world and what have you, and then just punting any Brentford players you want in 30 on a free hit if you're on a free hit, because out the back end, Chelsea and then West Ham, tougher fixtures to go. I can't see myself buying any Brentford, but I'd consider Tony as my third striker behind Kane and Vardy on free hit if budget allows, or look at Rico Henry or one of the others maybe.
You know what made me feel like real clever dick over the last week?
No,
it wasn't the strategy podcast on Friday. It was me saying to you last Monday, I think they might go back 4. And it did. And the reason I wanted Tom on, shout out again, happy birthday, buddy, before the Newcastle game was that run of fixtures: Newcastle, Norwich, Burnley, then the fixture in 30 against Leicester. And I think Brentford were always going to be an awkward one for people to invest in. The form's not been good either, right? But a little fixture run where it was a case of they were going to have to get points. Now, in hindsight, we can't actually know what would have happened in the Newcastle game, because it doesn't help when, obviously, Josh Da Silva got sent off after 10 minutes. But I think these next 2, they can put themselves safe, can't they? I think if they beat Burnley at the weekend, they're nearly safe, aren't they? Just for those back-to-back wins, and it's massive. So they played a back four. Ajer played at right back. I think in certain games that's going to give them some issues, but I expect them to hang on to that again for the forthcoming game against Burnley. So it's a dominant threat aerially in a full-back position, which at least can counter some of Burnley's diagonals played onto that side, which means Weghorst is probably going to pull more towards the other way if that's what Burnley decide to do. Eriksen played in midfield. They basically, from what I've seen of the game, it kind of looked like a 4-1-4-1, which allowed Janelt to go and kind of push on. Norgaard's the kind of natural sitter and protector, and it allowed Eriksen to kind of flirt between the two positions, depending on status of the game. What was clear was when they had breakaways, he wasn't breaking his neck to get in the box and stuff like that, Eriksen, which is completely understandable. He's obviously a cultured and brilliant footballer who I watched, obviously, for many years. And he is, interestingly, Suj, for game week 33 hitters, on the set pieces already. And obviously, it was assist for the first goal. And it's obviously his corner that led to the penalty for the second goal as well. He is 5.5 million. I'm not suggesting that anybody goes and buys Christian. I mean, I couldn't recommend him over, say, Ryan Fraser at this minute in time, for example. But game week 30, set pieces against Leicester.
Worth looking at.
Maybe. And as is Tony, who's obviously back fit. He'll obviously be pleased with the hat-trick return. I had a question a few weeks ago about if it was like last minute of the World Cup final, who do you want to take the penalty? Him.
Yeah.
He never looks like he's going to miss. He takes it like he's in the park, doesn't he? Doesn't even look at the ball, just looks at the keeper. If the keeper don't move, he puts it in the same place every time, that same corner where he put both the pens at the weekend. I think if you're building towards game week 30 and you're quite happy with your doublers lot, I don't think Brentford should definitely be discounted.
Wolves 0, Palace 2. I've had this down for a clean sheet and a 1-0 to Wolves. We're talking about defenders missing. Just talk about a defender that got some stick from his manager.
I do want to talk about that. He destroyed him, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he said to him he got injured because he wasn't prepared, and I have no time for people that aren't prepared properly. Well, what's he saying? He hasn't trained hard enough, hasn't warmed up well enough.
I guess
all
so.
of it.
I guess so, yeah. Maybe it's an incentive kick up the arse, but I think let's be honest, if Mourinho said that, he'd be saying, what are you doing? It's out of order, mate. And it is a little bit. I think it was obviously frustrating. It was also, interestingly, the first post-game interview that he'd done with the Wolves pressers at Molineux. All previously had been on Zoom. This was the first time he had an audience, and he looked like he wanted to make a scene of it a little bit. Yeah, I'm not keen on that. But I mean, look, none of us, other than the Wolves guys are there, might be able to give us some insight to say, yeah, he looked like he was taking the piss during the warm-up or something. But then if you know that's your player's character, don't pick him in the first place. Put someone else on the pitch. Johnny apparently got much better as the game went on, but what I've seen of it, he looked like he really struggled with Zaha towards the end of the first half, but apparently got better during the second. Yeah, I thought that was a bit odd from Bruno Lage. I think it's real frustration in the fact that they put themselves in a great position. They've lost 3 games in a row. That momentum has absolutely gone, and in spite of the fixtures coming up, any hopes they may have had for fourth are gone. That's them out the race for fourth. Doesn't put them out the race for European places, but there is no way I could see them finishing above Arsenal, for example. They will not catch that. What happened to Wolves, by the looks of it, was what they did to my team a couple of weeks ago. Wolves looked like they had a first half against Palace, like my team, Tottenham, had a first half against Wolves a few weeks ago. And Palace could have gone in more than 2-0 up at half-time. There were some really excellent performers for Palace. I said to you on that pod on Friday, I think get rid of your Palace players, and I don't regret saying that. I still think that's right.
I mean, I look at it and doing your old need and want, I still feel like I should be buying Wolves players with their run that they've got coming up, and should be not bothering with Palace players because they blank in 2 weeks, and they've got City and Arsenal in amongst that, and Leicester. So I think it still makes logical sense to get rid of your Palace players, and Wolves strangely are still investable for me. I don't know how much of that is bias.
It's now 1 clean sheet in 8 for Wolves.
Yeah, it keeps ticking along, but you know they'll come back. We feel like they've got to come back to getting clean sheets, surely.
Part of the reason for me being okay selling Cody, and I think, by the way, holding your Wolves guys is obviously fine, although I think if you've got Jimenez, I'd potentially be looking at something with a double or something else at this stage, because I think to not start the 2 consecutive league games now becomes an alarm, although Podence playing as the central striker didn't work. Great to see Neto back and start, by the way. He's the only offensive one that would interest me is Neto. Looking ahead at my future game, I'm never going to start Cody anyway. Mm-hmm. So again, go back to you kind of like, you've got Fraser and Ramsey. Is it okay to bench those players? Yeah, it is. I've got the money there to go Andy Roberts as part of my plan. And that just confirmed it for me at the weekend in terms of expendable. I cannot see a fixture where I start Cody. And it's obviously, he's a great sub. Of course he is, right? Because they have been one of the best defensive sides in the league. But actually, quite quietly, we keep saying it, another week, no clean sheet. And they could have got beat by more on that first half alone at the weekend. So definitely wouldn't buy as new. Doesn't mean you have to bomb out Jose Sarr or Cody or Kilman. I've seen a few people say Kilman's going to get dropped. Bloody hell. He's been absolutely outstanding for them this season.
No way,
like,
he's played every game, I think, right? He's
can't,
one of the few that's played.
Can't see that at all. He might change the system. I'll tell you why he might change the system. Is because everything we read about Bruno Lage pre-season was suggested that he would want to play a back 4. They've lost Semedo, which really kind of pulls the wing-back issue away. The one person who could have probably played there actually might have now become useful for them is Traore, who obviously sold to Barcelona and keeping that shape the same possibly. So they might move to a 4 because he might begin to look at it and go, this is how I wanted to play anyway. Let's begin to look towards next season is a possibility. And that would be great news, by the way, for Raul Jimenez if they did go that way. I've just not got any confidence that they will do. If they dropped to a back 4, I still think Saiss would more likely miss out than Kilman, personally, would be my take. I wouldn't even be surprised if he used Saiss. I wouldn't be that surprised if he used Saiss at right back, if he went for a back 4 possibly, because that's clearly a problem area. Johnny's been out so long, they obviously want to be careful with him, but it looks like needs must that he's got to play at the moment. He's 4.5. I wouldn't go there. I think in terms of investing new in Wolves, that moment's gone. Just on Palace, before you jump on, Suj, they play a slightly different system at the weekend. And ironically, Mr. Gallagher played a far more advanced role. It was far more of a 4-2-3-1 actually for Palace. And Gallagher played higher up the pitch.
And thank God didn't get any returns.
It was a little bit unlucky. Mateta's numbers, by the way, at the weekend, very, very good. But still, for me, in terms of what's to come for Palace, it's Manchester City next. Then it's Arsenal after a blank as well. You are not investing in them in no. Leicester away 32. 33, they could have a double. We will maybe... In fact, they can't have a double, can they? No, they can't because they should just play Everton. So 33, they could have the Newcastle fixture, but they could blank. This isn't a conversation on Palace now, really, in my opinion, until sort of 34. If you've got Gallagher and stuff, it's okay, but I think there are other options at the moment you should consider.
Liverpool 1, West Ham 0. Fair play, West Ham throwing punches and having chances, but you got to be better than that in front of goal, to be honest with you.
Stop all that. All the patrons want to know is how was bingo?
So my son, James, I was going to send a picture to you to make you jealous. Prizes at bingo were Easter eggs. Guess which Easter egg my son won, James?
Whisper.
Correct. He won a Whisper Easter egg, which is, as we all know, recycled chocolate, basically. So bingo was good. And if you've ever tried to play bingo whilst listening to commentary at the same time, trust me, this doesn't work.
So you weren't watching the game?
No, I couldn't get a stream on it at all. I was trying to get a dodgy stream on my tablet and it all set up. Nothing would work. I'm not sure why, to be honest with you. But yeah, I was breaking the law. So it doesn't matter that I couldn't get it. But then I went back and watched it afterwards when I got home. But when you watch a game when you know the result, it's very different to when you're in it. And it just did feel like chances were coming for West Ham. But Liverpool, right, Salah, Trent. Let's assume Salah, Trent is a done deal for most people. The debate earlier in the season was who's your third Liverpool, Jota or Robertson?
We've definitely got another name to
and
throw
it
in
was
the hat
very
now.
heavily Jota before, and now Luis Diaz has thrown his name into the hat as well. You've highlighted that you're going Robertson.
Yeah.
I think I'm going Robertson as well. I think Jota and Diaz between now and the end of the season could probably go blow for blow points wise from an FPL point of view, which is give or take. But chucking in the extra clean sheets for Robbo is Robbo. So I think I'm going to go Robbo, just because I think he'll outscore both Jota and Diaz between now and the end of the season by a bit, whereas Diaz and Jota could go like for like.
Yeah, there's another factor to this as well in terms of I think Diaz looks an amazing asset / player. He's got drive to his game. He's not frightened on the ball. He links well. He's got the same greedy nature to him that all the other Liverpool forwards, bar Roberto Firmino, have basically. So he fits in right at home as well. He looks a super talent. I mean, in terms of overseas signings hitting the ground running, and let's remember as well, he's not come from one of the bigger European leagues in respect to the Portuguese league. He just bang on it so quickly. A note for game week 31. Liverpool play Watford at home, 12:30 p.m. on the Saturday, off the back of internationals. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't looked yet at when Egypt or Colombia play in the midweek before, but there might be some impact towards that fixture. And obviously, if they play the Champions League on the Tuesday afterwards, which is possible, then we possibly could see some rotation for Liverpool in that fixture. And I'm thinking particularly Salah / Diaz. Now, as it stands now, what you're doing with your bus team for 31, well, it would be Salah captain, wouldn't it? But it might be something to think about when it comes round. And I think it's also something that's a little bit off-putting with Diaz. Admittedly, the same could apply to Mane, but we might have Firmino back fit by then, and we know we've definitely got Jota back fit now. So I think Diaz is one for people like late riser.
Chase the upside. Go on,
it's not for me.
Yeah,
it's not for me. So, me and Suj are both going to bottle it. We're going to go for Andy Robertson as third Liverpool. I don't think, and I know this is a question that's going to come this week. Are 3 Liverpool essential? No, because I think if I was building towards game week 30 rather than 3 hitting, then I would probably, in all seriousness, be looking at Tottenham or Arsenal assets instead.
You've
carry
been
you through.
Jarrod Bowen, and obviously the injury might make it easy for people to bin him now. West Ham's fixtures kind of up and down, hot and cold, really a little bit. So some of the home fixtures are pretty decent though. I might bin him though, to be honest with you. I don't have faith, a huge amount of faith. We've got obviously Villa, Tottenham, it's difficult. Everton fighting for their lives. Brentford, Burnley, those 3 fixtures are good, but then into Chelsea. It's up and down with West
Problem
Ham.
is, he's going to be a really tough sell for people who obviously aren't free hitting in 30, because if he's going to be back available, you're like, I still want that, don't I? Still Jarrod Bowen. Part of my idea and strategy was looking at it and going, well, if I free hit in 30, which I'm going to now, Bowen will probably still be in there for me, despite the fixture. And I had it part in my mind looking at it and going, I tell you what, I might buy him back even in 31. I'm not bothered about the move in the value, because your 31 to 33 fixtures are quite good actually as well. So I think what will end up happening, and I think loads of Bowen owners are going to make the same move here, and it might be influenced by what you see tonight. The ginger from Sweden, mate.
Yeah, Kulusevski is on my list of transfers to make. It's interesting that you mentioned selling Connor Cody because you can't see yourself playing him in the next few weeks. If I was to move, I was originally moving Ben Johnson on to Andy Robertson. I could move Kilman on, to be honest with you. Ben Johnson is cheaper and it gives me more money.
So you're free hitting 30, right?
Yeah. Which means I can hold Ben Johnson as bench player, and then Bowen to Kulusevski. And just make those 2 transfers. It gives me 2 double game week players. And the ginger from Sweden is definitely like 6.1 million he's gone up to now, is very much on my radar.
We are doing another kind of game week review podcast on Friday, so we will talk about Tottenham in a bit more detail then. But I can see, particularly if he does well tonight, Bowen to Kulusevski is going to be a really, really popular move, I think.
Watford 2, Arsenal 3. Arsenal made their way into the top 4, albeit because of the goal difference spanking that United took a bit later in the day.
They were already in fairness.
Were they?
Yeah.
Was it? I thought when I looked at it originally, they hadn't quite crept over the same points, but not on GD. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
Arsenal doing bits now, slowly gathering some momentum. Arteta having his influence on it, but still leaked a couple of goals at the back, which is un-Arsenal-like.
They scored some fantastic goals, in fairness, which obviously pains me to say, but I've been particularly... the third goal is an absolutely brilliant goal. Odegaard's round the corner and Lacazette's layoff, and then the finish from Martinelli. It's literally absolutely perfect from all three players. Lacazette's linking that team really well. The thing is with him, he still doesn't feel like he's ever going to explode into numbers. But I think I saw a stat that he might be the highest scoring forward over the last 8 game weeks or so, which seems remarkable. I've not checked that out. I don't think Lacazette's a buy this week. He might be one for those who've got money in the bank and want to consider maybe Jimenez to him, for example. And again, I think maybe even more so if you are running through to game week 30. Then maybe that appeals. But I think Odegaard, Martinelli and Saka would all be better gets. I won't rule out getting one of them in this week. If I do, Suj, it will almost definitely be for Trossard, actually. I think the double is difficult, right? Leicester have just come off the back of a couple of wins, so are in a better shape, and we should acknowledge back-to-back clean sheets, actually. And then it's Liverpool, obviously, on the Wednesday. And then even game week 30... Villa have just had 2 consecutive clean sheets and a couple of good results, and that fixture doesn't look quite so easy anymore. 31, they go to Palace. Palace had a great result, obviously, on Saturday. So the immediate fixtures don't look quite as great for Arsenal as they might have done kind of pre the last 2 weeks or so. I don't think it should put you off. I think Saka is one of them anyway, definitely falls into the he goes in and he stays in bracket. I think Martinelli is a great alternative to Saka if you're obviously struggling with the money. He's in and around that kind of Ryan Fraser value, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think right now, if you were buying Martinelli, Odegaard or Fraser, I think you'd probably go the Arsenal players over Fraser, just looking at the weeks kind of 31 onwards, that you'd probably want to play more than Fraser. Defensively, Adam Pritchard, our Arsenal correspondent, 350, put a brilliant thread out prior to the game, which I retweeted, and we're going to speak to him more about this on Thursday's Clash of Correspondents about Kieran Tierney's got the brakes on at the moment. He's got the brakes on because Tomiyasu's not available, and we're going to speak about that in a little bit more detail. So Tierney at this moment doesn't overly appeal. Tomiyasu has been doubtful every week for about a month now, it feels like. I don't know if there's a longer term issue going on. Ramsdale is going to be popular this week. I said last week that if I was wildcarding, I would probably have still considered going Ramsdale and Foster. And obviously with the double, he's a goalkeeper that, put it this way, if Arsenal do well defensively this week and you don't own any Arsenal defensive assets, it's going to bite you a bit. Because I think Ramsdale's the one that a lot of De Gea owners like me, I think most people got De Gea are going to go to Ramsdale. Put it that way. So there's definitely...
worth doing for a hit?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about going Pickford for a hit. That's mad, isn't it? This is why I'm 100k, and there's one extra digit on the end. It's not 10k, it's 100k. But then I'm upside chasing, Such.
Yeah, we are. Going to be an interesting one. Watford ready to bin them yet now, finally?
See you later, yeah.
Time for them to go. Other than Foster.
Foster's absolutely perfect to sit there as bench sub for the foreseeable. There is also, as kind of detailed on Friday's podcast, the Everton fixture could land as a random that's just a double, maybe just for those 2 teams. That would be my sod's law luck, wouldn't it? So I buy Pickford and then Watford play Everton in 32, and I didn't need it.
I may not sell Dennis, because I bought him at 5.5, and I don't need to sell him. I'll bench him for a couple of weeks.
I think that's fine. I mean, to be honest, on my strategy at the moment, like I said, Weghorst's probably second sub for me this week. And they've got Man City in 31, and it's probably bench again. I'm looking, okay, yeah, I can sell it, of course, but I've got a selection headache this week anyway. Let's not take hits for the sake of taking hits. In the case that, okay, fine, he can sit there on the bench, and if that double then does drop in 32, great.
let's talk about the Manchester derby to wrap up the games that we've had so far. I own Kevin De Bruyne in the sky. The wrong game. And it didn't even help my ranking that yesterday. As Pep put it in his post-match interview, Kevin is back. He's fit. He's doing Kevin De Bruyne bits, and he's ready and raring to go. But this was painful for United fans. I could feel it in. It's not the score. It's the domination. It's the clear levels above. Like, you're looking at it, you're thinking not a single player from that United team.
You talk about levels. If it was a computer game, you'd have taken the plug out and turned it off, mate.
Yeah, oh man. I'm just thinking like maybe Bruno Fernandes over Jack Grealish or something is what you could say for United players getting into that City team. But even that's a maybe. Other than that, City bossed it.
It is impossible for a football team to be losing a football match and have 8% possession in 15 minutes when they are losing.
Yeah, this
I'm
is
telling
the thing,
you that
right?
it is impossible.
At some point, if it was the Roy Keane, Paul Scholes era, one of them's going to go and fucking smash one of those City players.
It's so true.
And these guys are just standing off.
That's not necessarily the answer, by the way.
No.
But
in a derby,
you have your
want
certain
to see
pride and...
Yeah, you don't just let them have the ball and yeah. I was never that high on the Ralph Rangnick Kool-Aid when he came in anyway. But I don't think... I looked at it yesterday, post-game, and I'm like, looking at the results since they let Ole go and let Ralph Rangnick in, and United fans might say it was better. I'd rather the same results with Rangnick in charge than Ole anyway. But I don't reckon Ole would have done any worse than Ralph Rangnick has done in his tenure so far.
I think that's really difficult to say, actually.
He's probably got a similar number of points.
That was on a...
They have drawn so many games and lost games.
United, when one of Solskjaer's... I want to say it might have even been Solskjaer's last home game, right? They lost 2-0 at home to City, and it's the same. They never laid a glove on them. Actually, United's performance yesterday in the first half, there were some positive signs. In that game at Old Trafford, earlier in the season, it was 2-0, but it might as well have been 10-0.
But yesterday could have been 6-7-8.
It could have in the end, but they had some moments in the first half where they tried to expose a few things similar to what Tottenham had done a couple of weeks earlier at the Etihad. And they had a little bit of success, right? I mean, it's got a beautiful equalising goal. Pogba's pass to Sancho is absolutely brilliant, and he finishes it really well. They had some moments. I don't think the first half performance was disastrous, although I also thought that people saying they were unfortunate to be behind at half-time were possibly going a little bit over the top. But they were in the game, second half. I mean, as soon as it went 3-1, it's the self-belief, and I do get it. It is difficult when you're playing against a side like City. If you go 2-0 down, or 3-1 in this case, you're basically done, aren't you? Whoever you are, and you know it. And psychologically, it's difficult. And they've been through that a number of times in recent years, particularly in games at Old Trafford, actually, where they know... And it must be difficult because they do have some top players, but they know that they're a level below, right? But yeah, I think the lack of trying to win the ball back was pretty galling. It must have been awful for United fans to watch. That said, as a neutral, thoroughly enjoyed it. It was one of my most enjoyable halves of the season. Nothing to do with bias one way or the other for either teams. I was just watching it from a Manchester City perspective going, I'm so enjoying this, the way that they're playing.
Did it change your perspective on who to buy and who's buyable from City point of view from the attack, or is it still a case of they're going to share it all around? Can't be asked to get involved there, but just leave Cancelo in. And
no, they're probably going to share it all around. I have decided, I mean, Cancelo was one, and I know a few have sold him this week. And I did think about it myself, and I think a few will think about it this week as well, because I've got the luxury that it's planned and the money's in the bank to go from Cody to Robertson. But I think there's those who won't, who will consider the same move, Cancelo to Robertson, for example, right? And I don't hate that, but Palace away shouldn't be fearful for Cancelo in 29. It's Burnley away in 31. 32 is obviously the big game with Liverpool. And it might be that I go, do you know what, I don't want him for 32, come back on the wild card possibly, particularly if he loses value over these coming weeks or so. But I don't think he'll lose it massively because he's just still an absolutely outstanding player and asset. But we'll give you something statistically unusual, Suj. Kevin De Bruyne, home starts this season at the Etihad, FPL points return in order of appearance. 11, 1, 16, 7, 11, 11, 2, 18. 75 FPL points in
2 blanks and that, and
eight
so many double
starts.
figures.
In 8 starts.
Huge.
In home games. Now, the next home game they have is Liverpool. But he's also big game Kev, isn't he?
Oh.
He really is big game Kev when he's on it. I can't think of a player more in our league who just always shows up in the big games than him. So, I mean, I honestly wouldn't even hate him as a go and get 32. But there is a trend at the moment for his returns coming in home games, which you should be aware of because they don't have one for a little bit of time. But in the home games, he's proven value for the price that he is. I don't think he is otherwise. As I said last week, I think it's a case of, I mean, there was so many people tweeting, going, Sancho Mahrez, where were you for my free hit the week before? Well, that's it, exactly, with City. Next week, it'd be someone else at Palace. It'd be like Sterling to go and score twice at Palace, for example. That's how it works for them. That's why I don't have too much interest in what they're doing at the moment. And I think with the fact, obviously, they don't have a double blanking 30, City are probably not on anybody's agendas. And United assets, I think it's been like De Gea. I think this is now, if you were sitting there like I am, De Gea Foster, it's now right to bin that. Not that they can't keep a clean sheet against Tottenham, but I don't think we'd overly expect it with the way they're defending. And of course, Suj, to finish with the trend of absent defenders this week, Raphael Varane. I know there's been a lot of attention on Maguire's performance yesterday. Great nutmeg on the second goal, by the way. And Lindelof's performance, great. I'm going to do nothing on the second goal, stand on the edge of the box with Fred and just watch my team get obliterated during basically a pinball event in the penalty box. United with and without Raphael Varane this season, Suj. Without him, 24 goals conceded in 12 games. With him, 14 goals conceded in 16. Now, I don't actually think Varane's been great at all, but that's a sizable amount of data to say, yeah, actually, there's a big problem without him. And I think you should bear that in mind.
Yeah, I'm not interested in United anyway. De Gea has been their standout performer and he stuck around for me, but as once I'd binned Ronaldo a few weeks ago.
I said on my stream on Saturday that I didn't think anybody listening to us would still have Ronaldo, for example. And I actually told people, if you've still got Ronaldo, just take the -4 for Harry Kane now. If you're still in that position, I cannot believe that you're not making that transfer now this week with a double coming for Tottenham. I think United, Bruno Fernandes is another one, isn't it? If you're sitting there this week with it and you're looking at, particularly if you're running through 30 and you're looking at Son and the values there, you got the double, then you've got the Tottenham fixture 30, then you've got 31 at home to Newcastle and so on as well. I think those sort of moves are really straightforward for people this week. Defensive assets, I don't suppose anyone's got, have they? I think the best United asset at this moment arguably be Elanga.
Yeah.
We'll go 5-2-3 and we'll have Fraser, Elanga and Ramsey on the bench.
Good. Do you want to give everybody a rundown of what content we've got coming up this week? And then we're going to rattle off a few questions that we've had in on Twitter as well, James.
Yep, shall. So tomorrow's People's Poll podcast, the vote is out now. I'll be live to around about 5 p.m. UK time. You have 3 options by popular demand and because the subject has changed somewhat since we would have covered it last week. The opportunity to vote for Roman Abramovich's intention to sell Chelsea is one of the options. Another option is to look at the growing and worrying trend of fan behaviour, mainly off the pitch, obviously off the pitch, in terms of violence disorder. Do you see what happened at Mexico over the weekend?
No, but I've got a bookmark to research.
Christ.
At the stadium?
Horrendous.
Okay.
Like, unbelievably bad. It's not something that was focused towards what's happening in Mexico. It's more actually focused towards what's happening in England, if that's what you want to vote on, but we probably would cover it. And also, a few people have been suggesting, there were some suggestions last week that suddenly a reformed European Super League idea was suddenly going to get dropped. It didn't. But is it potentially still on the agenda? Could it rear its ugly head again? Wednesday will be Sky Fantasy Football Podcast, which feels like a pivotal day because I think there's going to be a lot of Sky Fantasy managers making transfers this coming Thursday. Our Clash of Correspondents has covered will be Arsenal versus Leicester with Adam Pritchard and Aaron Lagor. Me and Suj will sit down and do this again on Friday. We'll discuss the Thursday night games, cover Tottenham Everton for you as well. Patreon pods this week include Q&A today, Champions League preview tomorrow, Wednesday is Tottenham. Thursday is a quiz on Abramovich signings, actually. And Friday will be our Game Week 29 differential show. This week's Talking Tactics for advanced tier patrons will include a look at whatever's not covered on Monday Night Football tonight by Jamie Carragher and whoever his mate is. And we'll also include a look at what I would do on a Game Week 29 free hit.
Good. If you want some of the additional Patreon content, you know where to go. Patreon.com/PlanetFPL.
And I've had sand in my eye for this whole podcast.
Ah.
I think. Carry on.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
Because it's really starting to bug me now.
I was like, do patrons get a zoom in a view of your eyeball or something? They do get access to your fixture planning spreadsheet, which will be particularly useful in the
You can get that
weeks.
from basic tier.
Yeah.
Come and join the Slack community.
My God, people have been so boring with their questions on Twitter this week.
I don't know why people do it. Give me an example. Don't embarrass a specific person.
It's all to do with like Game Week 29, 30, 31 players. Should I buy this player, that player, this player, or triple captain versus double game
to be
week
fair,
versus
triple
whatever,
captaincy we haven't covered,
Yeah.
and we should cover it very briefly. Now that's a very fair point. Honestly, if I had it left, Mo Salah this week, and there's nothing to think about as far as I'm concerned. I did mention last week about the Vardy 37 possibility, but as I said on that pod on Friday, please don't hang your hat on that happening. Do we really think that, say, if Tottenham and Arsenal goes into 33, do we really think that Kane at home to Brighton and Arsenal is better than Mo Salah having the same two fixtures away from home?
Nah.
Not for me, to be totally honest with you. So I think, honestly, if I still had the triple captaincy, it would go on Mo this week. There might be some options land great in 36. So I think that's maybe the only one where I could say, for those who have used the bench boost, and plenty have this week, and the majority look like they've probably done well out of it, well done. Particularly, I think, because of Saka's return. Probably saved the Arsenal single game week because they were bench boosting. If you've used the bench boost, I can see some appeal to holding the triple captaincy to whatever you think the best option in game week 36 would be. In my opinion, that would still be Mo Salah, and it would most likely be Tottenham and Villa. So they're the ones. Those who've used the bench boost, I can see the possible appeal of holding to 36. There is no guarantee, literally none, that Salah will have that double. There's not even a guarantee that he would even have a double, because in theory, Liverpool could have obviously their fixture against Manchester United going to game week 33, and that might be it. If Liverpool lose in the cup quarter final, that literally could be it. So there's no guarantee. Similar applies to City, I think would most likely have a decent double. Who has City got in 36? I know I was penciling it in as West Ham as the second fixture. Newcastle at home. Chelsea, I've 2 home games, Wolves and Leicester. For me, maybe for those who use bench boost, you could hold it and then make a judgment call on. There will be some decent options in 36. That is a certainty. But honestly, I'd just use it on Mo this week, I think.
Right, we're going to go to Jack Garlick for the question of the show, James, which is non-FPL related. Who is the most overrated player in your team and most underrated player in your team for both of you? Thanks for all the great content.
Was it in Tottenham or FPL?
Yes, it's got to be.
Most overrated player in the Tottenham team is Matt Doherty, because he's not a footballer. No.
He's not regularly in the first 11, is he? In the squad, though.
Yeah.
You think Doherty's really overrated?
My mate, late rise.
Do a lot of people still overrate him?
He's getting loads of shout-outs, isn't he? I nearly had to block him. He asked me a question about him. I said, go and listen to the intro of the last pod. And he came back and he said, please don't block me. And then he fucking bought him anyway.
And underrated?
At this moment in time, Oliver Skip.
Yeah, I could agree with that on Ollie Skip, for sure. Overrated, I'm going to give at West Ham probably to Yarmolenko.
Wow, now.
Yeah, he's the most overrated because, I mean, yeah, it's obviously difficult timing with everything going on, but he is, as a player, he's clearly overrated. I'm bringing in geopolitics and war into the situation. He's one of the highest earners, right? He's up there at 100 grand
someone else, man.
Apologies. I know he's going through a difficult time, but I'm looking at over a longer period of time. He's one of our highest earners. He's north of six figures, mate. Over 100 grand. Okay. Clearly scored tons of international goals, but considering the international record and the salary, the minutes that he gets is pretty poor, really, to be honest, for us. You'd expect him to have...
I can't believe you're still talking about it. Move on.
Yeah.
Poor
It's
sod.
a difficult time, but he's overrated. And underrated has to go... I'm going to give it to Fornals.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a very skillful player. He's neat and tidy. His work rate is phenomenal. He's just one of those that you're always glad to see in the starting lineup because you know what you're going to get from him, and he can deliver. Obviously, he should have done better on the opportunity he had to score. When you're going through 1-on-1 like that, I don't care how big Alisson and his beard are, you've got to be putting that away.
I think the most...
Fornals is underrated.
Honestly, I'll give you a shout out. I think the most underrated player at West Ham is Declan Rice.
Well, that's also true, but it's a bit too obvious to go to that. I mean, he's highly rated.
I'm saying he's even better than what people think he is.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people that don't rate him. Generally, fans of the top three clubs don't rate him, or Manchester United fans, whoever would be interested in buying him, don't rate him. But
I think Chelsea fans do.
But then they compare him to what you've got already. Like, it's a bit hard to say, all right, okay, well, when you've already got Rodri, buying Declan Rice is very different to when you've already got
Fred.
Kante. For United, the United take him and bite our hands off, I guess. But when you've got Fabinho, it's a bit hard to then think, okay, well, where does Rice take us? So I can understand from their point of view.
I'm also influenced
clubs,
having watched Højbjerg for the last couple of
exactly
years.
that, right? And you take him in a heartbeat, and the United fans quite possibly would.
Love you, Pierre. Have a good game tonight, please.
If only. We did have a question in. Predict the score for tonight, James. So I'm going to end the show with letting you do that.
2-0 I went for, didn't I think? I'll stick with that.
Yeah, I'm still thinking it's 3-1 tonight for Spurs. And Heung-min Son, score them all, please, if you don't mind, my friend.
I don't care who scores. I pick for their own goals, whatever.
Let's take it.
Yeah, whatever.
Right, that's a wrap for this show. We'll be back at you tomorrow. There's a clear front runner in the People's Poll, so I think I've got a feeling for what we will be talking about tomorrow. Other than that, look after yourselves and stay safe. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Be nice to each other. I'm off to get something out of my eye. Cue music, please, man child.